Well, I always go back, and I'm pretty practical as a psychologist. Does my season make sense? So I will have things absolutely that I want to do, but does it make sense with what my other commitments are? And does it make sense with the, if you like, the level of challenge within that season matched up against where I am as an athlete? So they're your first things. And then when we look at that, actually, if we want a number of events, we've got to have a recovery and we've got to have a peaking strategy post-event and pre the next event. And we've got to be able to do the quality and the amount of training that we need to be able to make that happen. And we need to be able to do that without getting burnt out. And we need to be able to do that without allowing the other things that happen that we need to have in our lives to go on. So does our season allow for development? Does it fit in with our lifestyle? Are the challenges that we put into that season appropriate to be able to match them perhaps on a good day? But, you know, because of course we want to be developing through the season, but, you know, are we putting in things that are too far ahead of where we are? Or indeed, you know, one of the things I like the least with athletes, where we're really increasing the risk of injury. So, you know, you talked about how much I'm increasing my percentage chance of getting what I want to happen. But the other side of risk is how much we're trying to increase the percentage chance of not being injured, i.e. increase the percentage chance of being healthy. And I think that's a whole new side, by the way, in performance psychology, is because we've got these drivers as human beings to want to do stuff. We want to do stuff rather than we want to rest. What I want for my athletes is that they don't get injured, and we put everything in play to stop that happening. And I want them not injured over multiple seasons, if that's possible, because we want that season planning to make sense over 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, maybe 10 seasons, although we might not look at that horizon. We might look at a 3 or 4 year horizon maximally. And I want to get my athletes really being smart about doing all of that stuff and understanding that stuff, so that actually what we're really doing with those guys is we're educating them. And in essence, you know, you can see I got grey hair, I'm getting a bit old. You know, we're getting that knowledge into the people we're working with when their bodies are still working beautifully, and they don't get injured. And I reinforce that, because the difference of a season where you're not injured and you maybe have lulls and peaks is completely different to a season where there's an injury gets involved for some reason. And what we find out really is it's not just about the physiological ability to do something, it's confidence and it's the testing and all of the other things that gets in the way of someone competing again as soon as they could, or competing too early. So if we could be smart enough that we keep our athletes healthy, we're doing a great job. And I think that's one of the key skills of a coach or a psychologist, by the way, is having athletes healthy over a long enough period of time that they can hit what they really want to happen, or give themselves the best chance of that.
So how would an athlete develop their skills for that kind of season planning aspect? What can they do to help?
If you think about it, you've got a coach who's got an idea of what an athlete should do. And I say that, you know, because a coach will obviously have experience and they'll have an idea of what they've got in front of them. What you're trying to get is that real awareness of an athlete and that ability to get that information across for a coach to use and for the athlete to use. So I really want my athletes monitoring and being aware of how they are and how they react to certain things. So we start to, because every athlete is individual, and you will get a bunch of people in front of you and you'll get 10 different responses from 10 different athletes. Given the same program, they'll all get a bit better, but some will get better than others, and some will get overtrained, and some won't really like what you're doing, and some won't like you for whatever reason, you know that. And again, so what we want to do is have that situation where the athlete has the ability to take control and responsibility for themselves. And there's a lovely trait called hardiness, which is made up of perceived levels of control, high levels of involvement and high levels of excitement. And it's a great protective trait against overtraining. And if we look at it, the suspicion would probably be is because they're very, very engaged in what they're doing. And I think if we wanted to look at coaching as a continuum from telling somebody what to do to really discussing what they do, you know, so almost instruction through to real coaching where the coach is very engaged with the person. The more we're up at that end where it's real engagement, probably the more chance you have of tuning that so it really works for the athlete. So then it becomes very much about athlete responsibility and what you need from them. And of course, again, that's a skill that you learn over time, because if you've never been a triathlete before, why would you know, other than knowing the 3 skills it involves, how you go about making them work together? But of course, as we progress along that journey, your athlete, if we get all of these other things we've discussed properly, and we get really nice monitoring and really nice development of awareness and a lot of information and knowledge about that athlete, we then have, if we use that properly, we can tune that to make that work really, really well. And I think that's what actually keeps sport interesting. Otherwise, you're just doing the same thing year in, year out, which when you get into, which it looks like from the outside, but when you get into the nuances, it's actually really interesting, isn't it, being a sports person?
Absolutely.
And it's really interesting being a coach, because actually I think at a certain point, most of us in our lives, when we're dealing with other people, become coaches. And if we want to do that well, we should understand what good coaching is. And if we want to be good coaches, we should understand what good psychology is, because it all starts with the mind. So, you know, me and you probably cross over by 80%, whereas you've got a different set of skills around the specifics, and I've probably got a few extra skills as a psychologist that haven't come into yours. But me and you are doing very, very similar things a lot of the time, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. We're almost sort of taking off the glass ceiling for people and helping them perform beyond where their expectations were in places.
Yeah, and it's a partnership, isn't it? And that, I think that's the fun of it, is it, you know, it means a lot to you as a coach, and it means a lot to me as a psychologist when I watch my athletes developing. But I'm also very, very conscious that over the course of my career, I could work with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different athletes, but an athlete can only work with themselves once. So it makes absolute sense that they take responsibility for their own career. And that's probably when you get the best results. But that doesn't mean you don't take any notice of a coach. By responsibility, I mean, you still look for that outsider development with you, because it's very hard to get that overview of yourself sometimes. So, but it's knowing how you make all of that work for you.